You know, it's interesting, an eating disorder never travels alone. Usually there are other issues that are going on simultaneously, and the eating disorder in a way acts as a coping mechanism to manage that. So when I used to get this question in clinical assessment all the time, people would say, you know, why, Jen, why am I struggling with this? Or why is my son or daughter or my wife dealing with this? And it's never just one thing. You know, the best way that I can explain it is to sort of conceptualize it like a puzzle. And there are 5 pieces to the puzzle of why. First and foremost, we know through research that most people who struggle with an eating disorder have either struggled with anxiety in some fashion and or depression long before the eating disorder comes into town. And so that's one risk factor. Secondly, certain personality traits and a certain temperament can put people at risk, namely, you know, being very sensitive to change or conflict, having a difficult time, you know, when it comes to dealing with, you know, what decisions, being decisive in their lives. You know, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with my life? Sometimes can feel a little overwhelming. And finally, you know, being very driven, sometimes perfectionistic or people-pleasing. All of those things predate the onset of the eating disorder. So that's sort of the wiring. That's sort of the stuff that's going on beneath the surface. And the other 3 pieces of the puzzle, really culture. I mean, we live in a very toxic culture when it comes to body image and relationship with exercise and with food. And so it's you know, unfortunate that in this culture, we sort of set the stage for the development of an eating disorder. And the other 2, you know, are relationships. You know, if we were sitting here several years ago, you know, unfortunately in this field, we used to blame family members for, you know, your mom or dad is the reason why the child is struggling with an eating disorder. And we now know that there may be situations where the family dynamics has played a role, but we also know that people with eating disorders can come from extremely loving homes. And so it's really about understanding how that person has managed relationships in their life, in terms of conflict, in terms of change, in terms of honesty and vulnerability. And then the final piece is trauma or loss. Now, not every person that struggles with an eating disorder has had some major trauma in their life. Some certainly have. But I always think of trauma as it doesn't have to be, you know, this huge event. It doesn't have to be major physical or emotional trauma. It can be a collection of seemingly insignificant or common things, such as moving or, you know, having a conflict with a friend, not being picked for a particular sports team, that over time, if you have a sensitive personality and temperament, it rattles you a little bit more. So, you know, again, biology, temperament or personality traits, culture, trauma, and relationship dynamics. So when we're looking at, you know, the whole person and how to treat them, it's always really important for us to get a thorough understanding of each piece of that puzzle and how it applies to that particular patient so we can have a better chance at helping them.